I'm Sim Tech, military analyst at Stratfor, and I'm joined today by Lily Bayer, one of our Eurasia analysts, and we'll be talking about the standoff between President Poroshenko and the oligarch Kolomoisky in Ukraine. So Lily, we've had several things happening with Kolomoisky, the former governor of Dnipropetrovsk. What exactly happened over the last few days that caused the standoff?
So essentially, we had two incidents that created the standoff. The first was on March 20th in Kiev at the headquarters of Ukraine's major oil transport company, Ukrtransnafta. And what happened was that the director of the company was dismissed from his post. The director was an ally of the oligarch Kolomoisky. And Kolomoisky arrived at the headquarters accompanied by armed men. 3 days later, we had another incident, this time at a major oil-producing company, Ukronafta, also at the Kiev headquarters, where Kolomoisky's men, or at least individuals believed to be connected to Kolomoisky, who were armed, arrived at the building.
So this Kolomoisky character, he is one of the oligarchs in Ukraine, as is Poroshenko, who is now president. But who is he exactly? Where did he come from? What's his interest in Ukrainian politics?
So Kolomoisky is one of the oligarchs who rose in Ukraine during the 1990s. He is the co-founder of Privatbank, which is currently the largest commercial bank in Ukraine, but he also has assets in energy, metals, finance, and also a media empire of his own. He controls a major TV station as well as some other media. So he is very prominent in the economic scene in Ukraine, but since March, he is the governor of Dnipropetrovsk, which is a large industrial region pretty close to the front lines in eastern Ukraine. And his role has been very significant for the pro-Western coalition government in Kiev, because what he has been able to do is to muster his economic and political influence in this region and to use that to prevent the rise of separatism in the region.
And one of the ways in which he's done this relates back to what you said earlier when you said he showed up with armed men. Kolomoisky is involved in the whole setup of the volunteer battalions in eastern Ukraine. How does that work exactly?
Kolomoisky has been one of the oligarchs who has contributed money to help set up battalions to help the Ukrainian military in the operations in eastern Ukraine. So these battalions have been very, very significant in the course of the conflict, right?
Right. We've seen the Ukrainian army deal with a significant lack of manpower. So obviously, oligarchs contributing economical power to set up these battalions to bolster that power was very helpful to the Ukrainian military. But now we're seeing a lot of problems with those volunteer battalions as the Ukrainian military is trying to either disband them or incorporate them into their structure. We've seen the Aidar battalion being entered into the Ukrainian military. Earlier today, there were comments by the Ukrainian military on how they would like right sector volunteer battalions to join the military ranks. So, and that's a situation that, of course, will keep evolving as the crisis in the East continues. But these oligarchs also play parts much beyond the military situation. That, as I understand, they also have a more social part to play that supports the government.
That's right, especially with the conflict ongoing in the East and with the financial crisis that the Ukrainian government faces. Some of the oligarchs have taken on essentially roles that are normally taken by the states. So we have examples of oligarchs in the East providing humanitarian aid in separatist-held regions. We have examples of oligarchs providing security patrols in cities to help the police in places where the government simply doesn't have enough of a presence or an ability to create a safe environment for citizens throughout this crisis. So the oligarchs are not only economic players, but they are social and political ones as well.
And when you talk about these oligarchs, we're not just talking about a bipolar situation in Ukraine where you have Kolomoisky on one side and Poroshenko on the other. there's many more, I understand. And so what does this whole landscape look like? What does that do to Ukraine?
Right. So before the conflict broke out, the most influential oligarch in Ukraine was Rinat Akhmetov. Akhmetov had a huge empire based in Donetsk. He is still influential, but his influence is waning because he lost a lot of his assets, which the separatists nationalized or which have trouble operating because they're located in regions near the separatists. So Akhmetov's economic influence is really waning right now. And that has given space for other oligarchs like President Poroshenko and like Kolomoisky to try to take on a bigger role and a bigger piece of the pie that is Ukraine's economy. And the standoff that we saw last weekend was in part a reaction to this to these changing dynamics amongst the oligarchs as they fight to at least have influence over companies that are on paper majority owned by the state, but in reality for many years have been under the influence of oligarchs, depending on whichever oligarch is in favor at that particular moment.
Thank you very much for helping us pick apart this really complex issue. Sadly, that's all that we've got time for now. But please do visit Stratfor to learn more about this issue and others. Thank you very much.